Hi there. Yes, this Thursday is 15th of August and in this 67th Independence Day week, as we always do on Independence Day, CNN IBN is bringing you State of the Nation, focusing on whether there is anything to celebrate this year. Through the week, we'll be bringing you status checks on poverty, malnutrition, sanitation and bonded labor. Last night, we focused on poverty. Tonight, we focus on malnutrition. The UPA government is also set to bring in the Food Security Bill. In fact, the bill is up for discussion and passing tomorrow in Parliament. But is malnutrition a bigger problem than simply distributing cheap rice and wheat? Here's a report from Shawan Sen from Jawahar village in Maharashtra.
Carrying their toddlers, these women need to walk for almost 3 hours to get to the nearest hospital, which is 12 kilometers from their village. Manjula Wag is among thousands of Maharashtra's tribal women who fear the child could be malnourished. The people here dread the monsoon. Last month, 13 malnutrition deaths were reported in Mokra Taluka. Among the 110 families at Sirsonia Chapada, 28 children are malnourished. Shanti Sevram is struggling to raise her 1-year-old malnourished child and deal with her alcoholic husband who rants about the condition they are forced to live in. Frustrated by government apathy, many in this village have taken to alcohol, pushing their families to the brink. Over 109 villages have just this small 100-bed hospital in Jawahar to rely on. This hospital is full through the year with little space to even walk between the beds. Malnourished children in this hospital are kept next to an under-construction ward. For a population of over 5 lakhs, there are just 2 rural hospitals with many like them walking miles to reach here. To top it all, despite the Bombay High Court observation, the state government has completely failed to provide specialist doctors. Gaurava village reported 12 malnutrition deaths last year. With no public transport and the nearest hospital miles away, these were tragedies just bound to happen. Over 500 children are estimated to be malnourished in this tribal belt, which is barely 150 kilometers from Mumbai. But this is the astounding reality, even when the state government formed a malnutrition committee in 2007. But little has been implemented. Surely, these children deserve better, but no one seems to be listening. In Jawahar, with video journalist Kundan Singh, this is Shawan Sen.
Those high levels of malnourishment among children just 100 kilometers outside Mumbai, just over 100 kilometers outside Mumbai, those are the conditions in that tribal belt. We're asking, is malnutrition a greater problem in India today than hunger? Devinder Sharma, food policy analyst, is joining us. TV Mohandas Pai, chairman Manipal Global Education and trustee of the Akshaya Patra Foundation. The Akshaya Patra Foundation, of course, runs that excellent midday meal scheme. Manoj Kumar, CEO of the Nandi Foundation, also known for an efficient midday meal scheme. And Ritika Khera, assistant professor of economics at the IIT Delhi, as well as a development economist and someone who is very passionate in the Right to Food campaign and a believer in the Food Security Bill. Let me kick it off with you, Ritika Khera. Now, if I had to give you some figures here, according to the National Sample Survey, the percentage of people claiming to be hungry has fallen steadily from 15% in 1983 to 2% in 2004-05. But if you look at the levels of malnutrition, 48% children under the age of 5 are stunted due to malnutrition. 47% children are underweight. 50 to 74% children have anemia rates, which are very high. If we were to compare those two figures, it looks as if malnutrition is a far greater problem than hunger. People are not complaining that much about being hungry, but malnutrition is very high. Before we get to that dichotomy between do we provide food or do we provide good food, first I want to ask you, what are the reasons for this high level of malnutrition?
Yeah, so I think the problem of undernutrition is reasonably well understood now, and to deal with the problem you do need a whole range of interventions, because undernutrition is a manifestation of intergenerational issues. If my mother was not healthy when she was bearing me in her womb, then I will not be healthy. She will pass on her anemia or whatever it is. So there's intergenerational issues. There's gender issues, that because women are given a secondary status in Indian society, that also has a bearing on undernutrition. It is obviously about good food and nutritious food, and a lot of research has shown that when women have access to proper feeding practices during their pregnancy and later on, they are likely to have more healthy children. Besides that, there's you need access to safe drinking water, you need access to decent sanitation, you need access to decent health facilities. You need for women to give birth in institutions where they are well taken care of. And if you do all those things, then you're going to be able to make a dent in the problem of undernutrition.
That's a very important point you're making between sanitation and malnourishment, that if you don't have proper public health, if you don't have sanitation levels, India is the world capital, as we know, in open defecation, and we're going to take this up tomorrow, but if you don't get your sanitation right, then you won't get your malnutrition right either.
Yeah, so the research from the people who work on sanitation is very clearly showing that both these interventions are equally important, that you need to do both those things in order to be able to achieve the end result of improving nutrition. Let me
just bring in Devinder Sharma here. Devinder, the UPA government is of course all set to bring in the food security bill. It's up tomorrow in Parliament for discussion and passing. I have an economist who's written here, a right to rice is conceptually like Marie Antoinette's right to eat cake. Is distributing free or cheap rice or cheap wheat enough to tackle malnourishment, or is the focus missing from providing nourishment, from providing good food? In that case, should cash transfers be brought in? Should the foods that are being distributed through the PDS system be fortified with proteins, with soya? Is simply distributing cheap food enough?
Well, before we go to that, Sagarika, let me explain, when the Green Revolution came in, the focus was on improving the productivity, the yields. When you increase the productivity or the yield, it actually negatively correlates with the protein or the nutrition. So the yields went up, the nutrition of the plants went down. So we have been focusing more on producing more to feed the population or to ensure that your stomach is full, but the nutrition content had come down in those improved varieties. Now this was something which happened at the time of the Green Revolution, but I think over the years, last 40-50 years, we haven't made a correction in that sense that you provide for nutritious food, you provide for safe food, and that's the kind of good food that we talk about, which would have addressed the issue of malnutrition to quite an extent. Now having said that, the second issue that you have raised, I think is very important. Providing those, that's what I suppose the National Advisory Council first did a shoddy job, because when you try to build up a kind of a distribution system which provides 5 kilos or eventually it will be 3 kilos at some stage or so on. Actually what I am saying is we need to provide capacity in the hands of people to produce food. So this means it has to be linked with agriculture. Unless we link with agriculture, we provide the capacity, we provide income in the hands of people, I don't think the issue of hunger as well as malnutrition can be addressed. So what we need is basically self-reliance in agriculture, self-reliance in hunger. That has to be addressed. That unfortunately is not the focus of the food bill. Now coming to cash transfers, it's a still more worrisome problem, because people borrow these kinds of ideas from America or other countries, not realizing that cash transfer in India would not be taking them to good food, but it will be taking them to junk food instead. You can go and buy it from the shops now, so you can buy.
No, but how can you make? No, but why would you make that connection? Because the argument could be made that cash transfers would actually lead to greater choices, and that the choice would be made to go in for more nutritious food, such as perhaps brown rice or soya bean or jawar or bajra, which traditionally Indian populations have eaten. So if you provide the cash transfers instead of just the quantities of free rice and free wheat, then the argument is that many sections of the population would actually go for this nutritious food.
Well, I think it is easier said than done, because if you look at even the examples of those countries from where we borrow it, it hasn't gone into nutritious food there. It has also gone into junk food there. If you look at America, the biggest beneficiary is Coke. The biggest beneficiary is Walmart. The biggest beneficiary is, of course, Pepsi. So we know that who are the beneficiaries there, who get the subsidy on behalf of the poor in America. Now we are borrowing it in India, and we presume that Indians will go and buy nutritious food. I think let's not forget, if you look at the normal shops in a town, you'll have all the Maggies and Kurkures and so on, and I think that is one thing which people are going to fall upon.
Okay, so that is the danger of the cash transfer. That is the danger of the cash transfer. Let me just bring in TV Mohandas Pai. TV Mohandas Pai, now you're part of Akshay Patra, and Akshay Patra has that excellent midday meal scheme, but you accept that the midday meal scheme, as it works with the kitchens, the infrastructure, the transport costs, the refrigeration costs that are required, only works in the urban areas. That you can provide nutritious meals to children in the urban areas, but what about the rural areas where that infrastructure doesn't exist? We've seen what happened in Bihar. Clearly the midday meals are working well in urban areas, but perhaps in rural areas that nutrition is simply not going to the children.
Well, Sagarika, we are running the program in Nayagar in Orissa, which is a rural area, and Baran district in Rajasthan, which has starvation deaths and is working fairly well. So I think it's a question of distribution, it's a question of good work, good management, and the state having a conscience, and Bihar certainly doesn't have a conscience or compassion to take care of its children. They just don't care. But I want to raise a bigger issue here, Sagarika. Research has proven that sanitation and lack of good water is a major reason for malnutrition. In fact, a social scientist has put forward the thesis that where households have toilets, children are taller and heavier, and it's got research data to back it. In the district of Gulbarga in North Karnataka, a foundation which I was associated built 12,000 toilets in the homes of villagers at 18,000 rupees each. When we did research, we found that 4 to 5 times a year, they suffered from diarrhea because of open defecation and bad water. So if you have diarrhea 4 to 5 times, whatever food you eat is not going to stand on you, and you're going to be weak and malnourished, especially if you're a child or a woman. And if women have to go defecate in the open, then you have a problem. And for this, with 55% practicing open defecation, India will need at 20,000 rupees a toilet, 2,60,000 crores to get rid of this scourge once and for all in the next maybe 5 to 8 years.
Unless we get public health right, unless we get sanitation right.
I'll get a point. I want to make one point I want to make, Sagarika. We are spending 1,68,000 crores on this very badly drafted food security bill, because that's the cost of giving this food to 65% of the people, whereas maybe 30% need it. If we spend a part of that on sanitation, in 10 years we have a much healthy population and give them clean drinking water.
So let me get Manoj Kumar of the Nandi Foundation to respond to that. This food security bill is supposed to address the nutritional needs of the poor by giving them free rice at rupees 3, rice at rupees 5. I beg your pardon, rice at rupees 3, wheat at rupees 2, and millet at rupees 1. The 3-2-1 formula that the food security bill has. Now, as Mohandas Pai is saying, as Ritika was pointing out, the fact is that the food security bill is important, but is it going to address the nutritional needs of India?
Sagarika, the last time I was in your studio,
I beg your pardon. We seem to have lost that audio to Mr. Manoj Kumar over there. We'll try and get back to him as quick as we can. Let me get you to respond to what Mohandas Pai was saying. You are a huge supporter of the food security bill. Mohandas Pai saying, unless you get sanitation right, unless you stop over 600 million people from defecating in the open, India is the world capital of open defecation. Unless you stop that, you're not going to address nutrition needs.
Okay. Can I answer that? If you think of nutrition as a cancer treatment, now cancer treatment will require maybe an operation and also chemotherapy. So are you then saying that just because we can't afford chemotherapy, we shouldn't also do the operation? Actually, for nutrition you need both sanitation, as well as good food. The same research that Mr. Pai is pointing to has in fact shown that even access to good food has a significant effect.
But how will the food security bill give good food?
Yeah, so let me talk about that. Actually, the food security bill is not just about the PDS. It has maternity entitlements. It gives cash to women for 6 months during their pregnancy, which will allow them to access better health facilities and also buy extra nutrition. Number one. Number two, it has the integrated child development services, the Anganwadis, and all research is showing that until the age of 2 is the important time when you need to make sure that children have good health and nutrition. Number three is that the PDS, if it gives subsidized cereals, it frees up people's budget to buy more nutritious things like eggs, etc. And finally, the bill also includes, like you said very correctly, coarse cereals like jowar, bajra, etc., which are more nutritious.
Right.
Yeah, so there are
But
a
that's
whole
the
range.
argument that is often made in favor of cash transfers. That's the context in which I was giving it, that if you give cash, then maybe people will
Right.
buy jowar and
Okay,
bajra
so I can
and not take the white rice being supplied by the government.
Right. So in fact, I think that the food security bill should be taken as an opportunity to expand the procurement of jowar, bajra, etc., and to reduce perhaps rice and wheat, which are
Right.
less nutritious and also agriculturally less sustainable in India. And Mr. Sharma will tell you more about that.
Okay, let's take a short break at this point and come back and explore this question of how good food or nutritious food can be delivered to people. Are policymakers in the grip of the misconception that they simply have to hand over calories? They simply have to make free cereal available. That's not the issue. In fact, you have to make nutrition available, and that very important point of open defecation. The fact that India is the world capital of open defecation is what is leading to so much bacteria and so many harmful effects of the food that children are getting. Let's take a short break and come back. State of the Nation is coming to you all this Independence Day week. We're bringing you the darker side of India. We're focusing tonight on malnutrition. TV Mohandas, do you want to respond to what Ritika Khera is saying, that food security bill will subsidize rice and wheat and therefore free up household budgets to buy nutritious items like eggs? That's point number one. And point number two is that you need both things. You need sanitation, you need public health, but you also need food security bill. The two have to go together. You can't have just one without the other.
Sagarika, I believe the food security bill is the biggest disaster India is going to have and against the poor of this country. Just now the Planning Commission has said that poverty levels have come down to 21.9%. It means that people below calorie levels are 1,800 for urban and 2,300 for rural. So it very clearly shows that people are getting enough calories except for about 22% of the population.
No,
but the problem of malnutrition is something else. And that something else is a lack of clean drinking water, bad health and sanitation.
Ritika is shaking
and
her
to
head.
imagine that 65%, one minute, to imagine 65% of people require this food security bill, food to be given to them. 65% is a total fallacy, is the biggest sham.
It's the biggest fallacy. In fact, that's the point, that if you're saying that in fact 138 million, as the Planning Commission is saying, have exited poverty, poverty levels are coming down, then why do you need food security bill to give to the poor?
Because poverty and vulnerability to hunger are two different things, but a small correction on the poverty line. The poverty line is no longer anchored to calorie intake. It was dealing by the Tendulkar methodology.
Right.
So that is no longer linked. Poverty levels may well have come down, and that's a very welcome thing, but hunger is a completely different issue, and vulnerability to hunger still remains high. I think your numbers on reduction in hunger levels are correct, but
at 65%? 65%?
Yeah, it's very difficult. You know, today I might have a job and I'm able to feed myself, but that may not be the case tomorrow. I may get thrown out and I may need access to the PDS. Okay. And because a large part of the Indian population is in the informal sector, having access is a good thing. And many states have shown that this is a workable model.
Okay.
And states that are ruled by very different parties, Congress in the Himachal Pradesh, BJP in Chhattisgarh, and Tamil Nadu with AIADMK is running giving a universal
But
pay.
Mohan that's saying that in fact it's simply not sustainable at 3 rupees and 2 rupees. Let me just bring in Manoj Kumar here, who we lost the audio to earlier, who I believe now is back with us. Mr. Manoj Kumar, what do you make of the debate we're having that in the delivery of nutritious food, it's not enough to just give cheap food for all? That may be a populist political slogan. What is necessary is we make conditions possible for the delivery of nutritious food. This might mean fortifying the food with soya bean or with protein. It might be working on public health. It might be working on infrastructure. The focus has to be on nutrition and not just on give free rice and free wheat. Doesn't matter what the quality is.
Sagarika, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so the last time I was in your studio, the last time I was in your studio was when the Honorable Prime Minister had released the hunger and malnutrition report that we brought out, called the Hangama report, which not only Nandi commissioned the survey, we ended up interviewing nearly 100,000 poor women who are mothers, young mothers across 100 poor districts, and we measured 1 million malnourished children.
Okay.
Technically, they were all
your
going
point
to be
is?
malnourished in a
What
sense.
is your
but they
point? I'm
were-
going to ask you to push
No,
to
no,
a
we
point
measured
because
and we
we're up
studied-
against
yeah.
time.
No. So when we looked at it, the challenge that we have come across is the fact that we are skirting the discussion by discussing just hunger. Malnutrition is entirely different from hunger. Malnutrition is entirely different from food security. And I think we are doing a disservice by debating food security bill, when the discussion should be
On
what are the
malnutrition.
real causes of malnutrition and why shouldn't malnutrition be an agenda. I sometimes even wonder that the term malnutrition should be replaced with something sexier like hunger, and or something like kuposhan, probably more relevant. If you look at the real challenge, I will say that you need to empower mothers, and most of malnutrition happens in the 0 to 6 age group. We even found out that 92% women surveyed did not
Right.
know that their child was
Very
malnourished.
good point. That
We
the
feel-
education of the
we feel
mother.
if adolescent
Education of the mother,
only that.
very important in providing nutritious
not only that,
food.
Sagarika, not only that, from a futuristic perspective, I think we as a nation should invest in adolescent girls. If the
Right,
if
we
the survey-
can't
the survey
get, no,
places I
Mr.
went
Manoj
to-
Kumar, we can't go into the girl story at the moment because we have to stick to malnutrition. We're up against the tyranny of the clock. Let me just quickly put to Devinder Sharma, is the right to rice actually self-defeating? Because I have an economist here who's written rice is the most expensive cereal. It guzzles water. It requires 22 irrigations per crop as against 8 for wheat. Indians have traditionally eaten grains such as bajra, jowar, which cost half as much as rice. So it's completely erroneous to provide a legal right to rice, which is not sustainable, nor is it nutritious.
Well, we all know that rice is a water guzzler. You require about 5,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of rice. Now, having said that, this debate of water with rice, I don't think is relevant here.
Okay.
What is more important is that we have to bring in sustainable agriculture practices. We have to bring in that kind of technology which is less water consuming and of course does not poison the soil, does not draw out more water and does not contaminate the environment also. Now, that's a different issue. But the more important thing is that we need to go in for that kind of agriculture which is
So we need to
linked up
alter
food
the nature of
security.
agriculture completely.
No,
We need to alter.
if you allow me, Sagarika, the tragedy of this country is that majority of those who are hungry are basically farmers who produce food for this country. More than 50% of
Right.
the people who are hungry actually are farmers. So
Okay.
unless we do something for that class, I don't think we can
Okay,
be
so we're going to
addressing
have
that issue that
to
we talked about.
empower the farmer. Unless we empower the farmer, there will be no end to malnutrition. Very quickly, you want to say that in fact, if you want to get rid of malnutrition, you have to also have the food security bill.
No, in fact, what I want to say is that the food security bill in its current form has many shortcomings, but it does have a lot of the things that the others are asking for.
Right, it has all of that as well.
Yeah.
And
No problem.
Mohandas, you were saying, junk the food security bill, invest in public health. Without that, malnutrition can't end.
Sagarika, Sagarika, about 30% or 35% of people require food support, they require sanitation, they
Where is he
require
getting
clean
that
drinking
number
water.
from?
Give them all three and then we'll be okay. I'm
Okay.
just adding another 10% to the 20% of the planning commission, that's all.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed to all my panelists. That was malnutrition, a problem which is even greater than hunger. As TV Mohandas Pai was saying, it's related, as even Ritika was pointing out, related very crucially to public health, to sanitation. India is the open defecation capital of the world, and tomorrow we're going to be taking up exactly this issue, sanitation. Why is it, what a scandal it is that in today's day and age, 67 years after we got independence, 66 years after we got independence, so many Indians do not have a toilet. That's tomorrow on State of the Nation. Do tune in. Thanks for watching.